NBA reporter, Sports Illustrated. Jake Fischer is going to join us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as we get ready for not only the crazy free agent season, but also some trade possibilities, including Kawhi Leonard, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on the Sports Bash. Jake, what's going on, man?
Too much. What's going on with you guys?
Well, getting ready for the weekend down the New Jersey shore where free agency is going to be heightened this season for the first time in a while. The Sixers would seem like players for top-level free agents for the first time in quite some time. Would you concur?
Yeah, I'm about to head down to Ventnor on Monday.
Well, that's where I live, sir.
And by then, the Sixers could very well have signed a major marquee free agent.
Yesterday you had mentioned the Kawhi Leonard thing. Let's start there first, okay? Yet to make a formal trade offer, but what are some of the names that are in that possible discussion that could move San Antonio's pile?
So from the reporting I did yesterday, it really seems that all the information that has been brought to the public eye from ESPN, from New York Times, from Yahoo, from our reporting, it's all bubbled to the surface from preliminary discussions. My general sense is that no team has legitimately offered the Spurs a substantive offer that they know the Spurs would be willing to take for Kawhi Leonard. So with that in mind, we came, as Sports Illustrated, we came into contact and learned of legitimate, true trade scenarios that the front office is preparing to offer to San Antonio when the time does come to make that legitimate offer. And those scenarios that we listed in the report, which, mentions Dario Saric and Robinson Covington by name and potential first-round draft selections, those are scenarios that the front office has brought to Sixers ownership's attention, being David Blitzer and Joshua Harris.
So essentially, Markelle Fultz is a name we kept hearing a lot. He has not been included in a deal or a potential deal at this stage.
Yes, because, from preliminary conversations with the Spurs, they have made it very clear to the Sixers that Dario Saric is a very, very, very primary target that they would like in return of a hypothetical Kawhi Leonard trade to Philadelphia. They would also like Robert Covington. So with that in mind, what happens with that information, the front office takes the Spurs' preferences, collaborates that with players that they would be hypothetically willing to move in exchange for Kawhi Leonard. They come up with a package that kind of is in the middle of that Venn diagram, and they send those scenarios to ownership.
So does this mean, Jake, in your mind, that the Sixers are unwilling to move Fultz or give up Markelle at this time?
I would think so, especially being that I've been told from multiple sources around the league, from both people inside the Sixers and out, that Fultz was never mentioned in Philly's talks to try to move up into the top 10 on draft night. So I truly believe he hasn't been significantly discussed in any legitimate capacity at all here in the trade market this offseason.
I'm sure you saw the report that Brett Brown had gone out to check on Markelle Fultz's status. What do you think went on during that visit? I mean, what was he looking to see?
Well, so he's out in Los Angeles training with Drew Hanlon, who's, now pretty much emerged as a celebrity basketball trainer here. And I think the one thing to keep in mind with Hanlon is that he posts a lot of his workouts on Twitter. I mean, that video last night, I'm sure you guys saw, of Joel Embiid dunking on Mo Bamba and yelling, "Welcome to the league."
Yeah.
Like, that's out there for a reason. We haven't seen Markelle Fultz shooting jump shots on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever. We've seen him dunking and throwing stuff alley-oops and stuff like that. So I could imagine Brett Brown wanted to go out there and get an in-person glimpse at his former number one overall pick's jump shooting progression.
And I know that when the season ended and they asked about fixing Markelle or working on his shot, that Brett had indicated that he wanted somebody that had Sixers ties or somebody that Sixers had faith in for him to work with. I guess this fits the category.
Exactly. And Hanlon is someone who Joel Embiid has worked out with dating back to his pre-draft process in 2014 after he came out of Kansas. So he He's the guy that really prepared Jason Tatum, the other element of that Markelle Fultz trade, for his Rookie of the Year caliber season. So he's definitely someone who's well respected around the league and someone who the Sixers and their players have had contact with and success with in the past.
Jake Fischer with us. Now, Jake, there were reports that Dario was asked for in some deals on draft night and that the Sixers were unwilling to move him, but would they be willing to include Dario in a deal if it gets them Kawhi?
I know for a fact that when the Sixers contacted the Memphis Grizzlies at number 4 to potentially move up, that the Grizzlies asked for either Covington or Dario Saric in addition to the number 10 and number 26 overall selections, which obviously later turned into Mikal Bridges and Landry Shamet, and Philly said no. But that was to trade up into the top 5 for a potential prospect who could be something one day. Kawhi Leonard is a different story. He's, a former Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. He finished second in MVP voting 2 years ago. At the same time, the Sixers and Celtics are absolutely weary of trading for Kawhi, being that his behavior over the last year has been very unpredictable. This is the first time ever that the Spurs have had a situation like this on their hands. And obviously San Antonio is hailed as, the paragon of a culture and organization. So for him to be, AWOL at times and not showing up on their playoff bench, and he's made it very clear that LA is his preference. It's tough to put in your chips and prospects that you really value for someone like that who could very easily flee to Los Angeles in a year when he first free agency in 2019. So I think that's the reason why the Sixers have only discussed these options and they haven't actually made the offer yet to San Antonio.
Now, Jake, how much of an advantage, though, is having Brett Brown in the Sixers camp, though? Because he kind of has insight and intel on Kawhi Leonard's health, his mindset, and the way to work with him.
It's a huge advantage, and the 2021 Miami Heat unprotected first-round pick that they acquired on draft night is also a massive advantage, too, because as Zach Lowe at ESPN reported, the league is really, really, truly discussing letting high school prospects back into the NBA draft, and it could start as early as 2021. No one knows for sure if it's 2021, 2022, 2023, but if it is 2021, the Sixers will have 2 selections in the first round of what people are calling a double draft, which would have the top one-and-done freshman candidates like we've seen the last couple of years, and the top high school prospects that would have gone one and done the following season. So it would be a potential situation like the 2014 draft that had Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker and Joel Embiid go 1, 2, and 3. That whole class, plus on top of it, the 2015 class that had Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell and Kristaps Porzingis. That's a draft that a lot of teams would love to have an additional pick in, and that's going to be a massive bargaining chip for the Sixers if it does come to really, having an arms race to get Kawhi.
Yeah, and that unprotected pick. Teams just don't offer unprotected picks in this day and age. We're talking with Jake Fischer here about NBA free agency and his great article that he has up on SI.com about the Sixers and their interest in Kawhi Leonard. I'll ask you this then, Jake. What do the Sixers need to do to pretty themselves up? What do they have to do to make themselves the front runners to land this trade with the Spurs for Kawhi?
It's tough because I think all these teams, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Sixers, there are reports that the Heat was involved and the Cavs have made offers. No one's actually made a legitimate attempt to get Kawhi at this point. And I don't think any team wants to be the first team to make that call and to then retroactively set the market of what everyone expects you're going to need to get or need to use to get Kawhi Leonard. It's a tough spot because if the Sixers were to theoretically put Saric and Covington and a first-round pick in play, and no other team was willing to put 2 players and a pick in there, the Sixers would basically lose one of those guys when they wouldn't necessarily have had to. So I believe they have the package and the pieces available that would probably compete with any package or any team in the league can offer. Because the Celtics aren't going to be making Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum available. So they have a really good chance of landing him. It just comes down to if they're going to be willing to pony up the assets that could really just swing this completely in their favor.
Yeah, Jake Fischer, Sports Illustrated, is with us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Like, do people around the league think that the Sixers package can be better than LA's? Because essentially they don't want to deal with LA, but if LA gives you a significantly better offer, you'd be a fool not to take the better offer just to say, hey, we don't want him to go to the West. But can the Sixers put together something at least comparable or better than LA?
Completely. And I mean, I think the peak offer that the Lakers would probably be willing to offer up when it gets down to it would be Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, and a first-round pick, which both of those are really solid young players. I'd probably rate Brandon Ingram as the highest upside guy in that group of four with those two guys and Sarge and Covington. But Kuzma had a nice rookie year, and I don't really know what that actually equates to outside of being in a vacuum of some young team that has a lot of minutes available and not really playing for anything. So Sarge, I think, is a much, much higher prospect, and he's someone that a lot of smart talent out there around the league really view highly, and some people rate as a top 50 player in the NBA right now.
Which is a tough choice for the Sixers to make because, as you said, if there's some medical concerns or that he bolts after 1 year and you lose Dario, you're kind of like back in this spot where, you could see them turn into like the Toronto Raptors where you're just a perpetual 50-win team and not having that piece to be able to get over the top.
That's why, they continue to stockpile assets and continue to maintain flexibility. Because you never know. That was the start of Sam Hinkie's plan. Before it became dubbed the process and before Brian Colangelo came in, the overall idea was to maintain as much flexibility in terms of salary cap and future draft pick assets to give yourself as many chances as possible to land this franchise-changing, cornerstone caliber players that can ultimately compete with the likes of Golden State.
All right, so we're getting to free agency. Is there a timetable that you think the Spurs want to make some kind of move?
They probably have a specific timetable that they would like, but they don't really have. They're not going to be able to drop a deadline and be like, "Hey, team, give us your best offers by this day,"
right?
Or we're keeping him. I think the reason all this stuff came about yesterday and this week is because they were trying to use LeBron's opting date as a lever to make these teams really pony up their assets. Because LeBron wasn't a free agent at the time. Now he is. He's opted in, and trading for Kawhi Leonard would have certainly helped the team's chances of signing him in free agency. So I think that's why it all came to fruition the last couple of days. But now LeBron's a free agent. He could sign July 1st at midnight. He could sign August 31st if he wants to.
Right.
So there's really no bargaining chip the Spurs have right now to be like, hey guys, we need your best trade offer now, and you better get into us before we trigger on the best offer that we get.
Jake, which way do you think he's going to go on that July 1st versus August 31st type scenario? Because we've talked to different people who have said that LeBron, in the past, his history has shown that he has no problem being the first guy to sign and then let the pieces fall in. And then I've heard the argument or going back and forth with Mike about, I think he wants to be the last, like to see what takes place ahead of him and how the picture's going to look.
Yeah, I know there's been conflicting reports about if he's been in contact with Kevin Durant, Kawhi, whatever. He's definitely in contact with those guys. I mean, Kawhi publicly, or not publicly, but having his camp leak his trade interest out to the public, or to the media to get to the public, the Friday before the draft, clearly was to try and grease the wheels when, draft picks don't have a name attached to it. The number 10 overall pick is a little bit more intriguing of a trade asset when it's not Mikal Bridges, because maybe Mikal Bridges isn't someone that the Spurs want, for example. So he was clearly trying to get the Spurs to make a move sooner rather than later. However, it also gave them a lot of time to talk with other top free agent guys. And the way the finals ended so early in a sweep, and how much time we've had before July 1st, I think the dominoes are gonna drop a little quicker than they usually do this year. And I think the big pieces are gonna be off the board by July 4th.
Jake Fischer, Sports Illustrated. Are you surprised that the Sixers package doesn't include Zaire Smith in there?
If that's who San Antonio really required, I'd imagine Philly would make him available. But the same thing we were talking about Kyle Kuzma. Zaire Smith hasn't played a minute in the NBA yet. And while the Sixers are really high on him, and Brett Brown said it publicly on Thursday night in his press conference, they believe that his jump shot is very functional, and they'll be able to make him into a above-average three-point shooter. A lot of people in the league don't agree with that. So maybe San Antonio hasn't really inquired about him in that deal. If they do, I would imagine he's a prospect that they're obviously very high on, but they would definitely be more willing to put him into a deal over Markelle Fultz.
We're spending some time with Jake Fischer of Sports Illustrated, at Jake L. Fischer on Twitter. Your story I read a couple of days ago regarding the trade on draft night. You wrote a piece behind the scenes of that trade. Now, there's been some conflicting reports whether the Sixers called them or the Suns called the Sixers. You know, the Sixers were like, we're content at number 10, and then the Suns came calling us. Ryan McDonough had said they called them. What did you learn about the behind the scenes of that trade on draft night, which still has people kind of buzzing?
I believe that the Sixers re-engaged Phoenix for the fact that the Suns were definitely prepared to take Dante DiVincenzo at number 16. I've heard that from multiple sources. As I wrote in the story, the Bucks they had DiVincenzo number 1 on their board at that time, and they were really looking forward to having him. And they contacted Phoenix, and Phoenix said, no, we're taking him if we keep the pick. So to me, that makes me think that Philly must have called and said, hey, Zaire is still available. We really like him. If you can up your offer from what we previously discussed, which Brett Brown said on Thursday, he knocked back. That was the direct quote he used. A pretty good offer for Mikal. I'm pretty certain that the Sixers called back and said, hey, if you can up your offer, we can talk an actual deal.
All right, we'll find out how it all goes down. Kawhi Leonard will ultimately, you believe the Spurs have to and will trade him?
They will, because at this point, there's no repairing that relationship. Kawhi doesn't even want to set foot in the Spurs locker room again. If you're that far down the road, there's really no mending fences. And R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich are too smart to just let him toil away. And, look at exactly what happened with the Sixers and both Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor. They held those guys. They waited. They hoped that they would, improve their draft or their trade value, and they would garner better offers. It never happened. Both of those guys' values continued to depreciate, and they ultimately didn't get their best possible value for them. And the Spurs know that. So I think it's very, very, very unlikely that Kawhi is still in San Antonio by the time that training camp opens up in the fall.
Now, Jake, do you think that Kawhi and LeBron end up together somewhere this year?
It all depends on who San Antonio pulls the trigger with. The big difference is that with LeBron and Paul George, they are free agents. They are unrestricted. They can do whatever the hell they want.
Right.
Kawhi Leonard is a prisoner of the Spurs. As much as that's a difficult wording to put on it, the Spurs could say, we're not trading you. You're stuck here for a year. These contracts are obligated to follow suit. So it depends. If he goes to Los Angeles or goes to Philadelphia, there's, a really high likelihood that he joins up with LeBron. But if it's a Paul George situation, like last year where the Thunder come in at the last minute and make an offer that the Spurs weren't, or the Pacers at the time weren't expecting, like if a random team like the Phoenix Suns just puts out, Mikal Bridges and Josh Jackson and all these guys, maybe he ends up in Phoenix, maybe he ends up in Sacramento. Like, you never know what happens. So it depends on where Kawhi lands, but if it is one of these three teams, or one of LA or Philadelphia, yeah, I think there's a great chance that LeBron would follow.
All right, Jake Fischer, Sports Illustrated. Check out his reporting at SI.com. Jake L. Fischer on Twitter on the Sixers' potential offer for Kawhi Leonard, and behind the scenes on draft night, the trade for number 16 and the 2021 pick. Well, enjoy Ventnor. It's a great town.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a house on there for a while.
Well, you're probably right next door to me and never knew it. I'm the loud guy.
All right. Well, maybe we'll link up at Maynard's.
Yes. I was there too late last week. All right, Jake.
All right. Take care, guys.